Morning, folks. Welcome to the Sunday Politics. Jeremy Corbyn has attended more Labour Party conferences than most, but this is his first as Labour leader. He embodies the hopes of many Labour activists and new members. If the polls don't make for happy reading, it could be a difficult week. He'll face some tough battles over Trident, how to balance the budget, Europe, tax, and crucially, how the party makes policy. He wants the grassroots who voted him in to have much more of a say. We'll be talking to former Deputy Prime Minister John Prescott. And one of those who used to be in the Shadow Cabinet but didn't fancy serving under Mr Corbyn. Could more moderate members of the party be deselected? Former Shadow Chancellor Chris Leslie will join us from Brighton.
In London,
In the southwest, concerns for the future of Devonport Dockyard as Labour conference delegates prepare to consider scrapping Trident. Close to your heart. The Chancellor gave the plan for a new nuclear power station in Somerset, a multi-billion-pound boost this week. But that deal prompted our Green guest, Molly, to accuse the government of having an anti-renewable obsession. Well, we'll hear from her again after this report from Sampson Melville.
The sign might lead nowhere at the moment, but this week the government clearly signalled its nuclear intentions, announcing a £2 billion loan guarantee for a new power station in Somerset that will be the UK's first for 20 years.
Very good. Thank you for dinner.
Made during a trip to China, the Chancellor's pledge was designed to convince two Chinese partners to join with French energy giant EDF to invest in Hinkley C.
It's just about having a reliable power round the clock, even if the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't shine, around the clock. We have this reliable energy and it will save customers 10%, at least 10% of their bills.
It may have been all smiles in China, but it's left supporters of renewable energy increasingly anxious about the direction of the government's energy policy.
Here in the southwest, where there's such obvious green energy potential, there's particular concern about what's being dubbed an anti-renewables obsession at the heart of government.
That warning from the region's only Green MEP, as some of the southwest's army of Conservative MPs do seem to lend weight to this concern. Permission for a massive wind farm off the Dorset coast was rejected by ministers earlier this month. It had been strongly opposed by the local MP.
The problem with Navigator's Bay is that it's too big and too close, and will desecrate one of the most beautiful parts of our country.
And in the summer, the government announced plans to cut subsidies to solar and onshore wind farms, arguing it's over budget and close to meeting carbon-cutting targets.
Many people in Cornwall feel that we have been overrun by wind turbines and solar farms. And can I assure the Minister that the recent changes announced have been warmly welcomed by many people in Cornwall?
But those earning a living in the renewable energy industry say it's frustrating. Tony's already had to lay off 2 of the 15 staff at his solar panel firm since the summer and says more job losses are likely. He's written to the Prime Minister, arguing cutting the subsidies now is like building half a bridge.
Really, we're frustrated because the blinkered approach that the government is giving us. When Conservatives got voted in, we didn't see this coming because they've been claiming they were going to be the greenest party ever. And clearly they're not. These decisions are appalling. They're putting money into fracking, for example. And I just wonder if he's actually aware of the capabilities of solar.
While this typical business client of Tony's in Truro can expect to make up to a 30% return on its solar panel investment, the benefits will drop dramatically for those coming on board next year. Renewables experts say ministers urgently need a coherent energy policy.
So there seems to be a knee-jerk reaction. It's hard to escape the conclusion that some of that is ideological, if you like. I mean, it's clear that some Tories don't back renewables, and there are some doubters about climate change as well. So, I mean, the worry for us is that the government is committing itself to other forms of energy generation, nuclear and fracking, and both of those are very high risk.
The £24.5 billion Hinkley C deal is expected to be signed next month. The government says consumers have already paid enough towards the renewables industry through a levy on their bills, but it's still consulting on the subsidy changes.
Sampson Melville reporting. Johnny, what happened to the pledge to be the greenest government ever? You've fallen out of love with wind power, cut subsidies to solar farms,
well, let me just
supported fracking, and now
what we have done since 2010 has actually been the greenest government ever. We have now got to a place where we need to relook at these subsidies to make sure we run a financially secure economy. That is what's happening now. The green subsidies have been there for a while, and I understand the frustration that people have built businesses on the back of those, but we must retain this financial security if we are going to go on. And it's all about a fuel mix as where we're getting that energy from, which is why the deal that the Chancellor signed this week is so important.
OK, Molly, what do you make of that? This is the greenest government ever.
This is a completely farcical situation. We have the Tory spin machine going into overdrive to try and convince us about the Hinkley deal, because actually it's really in trouble. You know, there's legal challenge, there are technological difficulties. It's actually threatening our energy security now, because the plants that are being built in Finland and France are so far behind schedule. We're having to pay twice the market price for our electricity so that we can give money to companies owned by the French government and the Chinese Communist Party. It's a complete farce.
OK, Johnny, it's a complete farce.
Yeah, well, clearly I don't accept that view. The idea that Hinkley Point is endangering our energy security is clearly quite far-fetched.
A lot of people are worried about the Chinese investing.
Yeah, of course they are, but we can't, you know, with these big projects, we can't rely on companies like EDF for these massive capital projects, and we need to, yes, I understand the concerns of being linked to China, but China is a huge growing economy, and actually, if we are going to do bigger projects like this, we need the sort of multilateral approach to it, and at the end of the day, it is going to provide energy security for the next generation. That's what we need to focus on.
What about the fact that the next generation will be forced to pay double than we're paying now for their energy? This is expensive energy, isn't it?
This is expensive energy, yes. It's less expensive than is currently paid for wind and for wave energy that's produced. But, you know, the government has agreed that tariff. The experts have agreed that. And I think it'd be far-fetched, again, to say that this is endangering our security or anything like this. It's actually a really positive move, particularly for STEM in the southwest.
Let's just bring Mike in there. Jeremy Corbyn's been very clear that he's opposed to nuclear energy. He'd like to renationalise the energy companies and put solar panels on every roof. Is this practical?
Well, what Jeremy's also said is that we've come a long way from the days of Hugger Husky, and clearly we have. Now, Hinkley will bring tens of thousands of jobs, skilled jobs, to the area, including the supply chain.
Because it was something that the Labour Party previously did support.
Well, I actually think Hinkley is good for the region. Claire Moody, our MEP, also supports that. But there seems to be some sort of... the government's off track if it's on the one hand supporting Hinkley and on the other hand running a mile from the likes of Navitas, because that also would have brought tens of thousands potentially of jobs to the region on a non-renewable basis, and so it's really quite disjointed, their approach. The Navitas offshore wind farm.
OK, I'll just go back to Molly briefly because you're out there in Bournemouth. Molly, is this something which we could manage without? Do you think it's possible to keep the lights on in the UK without nuclear, without Hinkley?
We are facing an energy gap over the next decade, and renewables are capable of coming on stream fast and filling that gap. But more importantly, it's a huge economic resource right across the southwest, which this government is destroying because of its focus on the city and its focus on fossil interests. So we really are seeing jobs lost in the southwest, opportunities, economic opportunities squandered because
Molly,
of the interests of London and the city.
I'm going to have to stop you there, but thank you very much for joining us.